So, should we introduce ourselves? You want to introduce your... Yeah, so I'm one of the permanent staff members at Counseling Services. My name is Jay Middleton.
I'm one of the interns at Counseling Services. My name is Oscar Escobar.
Okay, and so we're here to talk to you about mindfulness. And so, have any of you ever gone for a drive you do commonly to the grocery store or work, and you get in the car, and then you get to work or wherever you're going and you have no memory of the drive? Has that ever happened to someone? Yeah. Or let me give you another example. Have you ever been talking to someone and they're listening to you, like they're like nodding their head, but you can tell mentally they're blanked out and not really listening to you? Has that ever happened? And I imagine we've done that ourselves, right? You're hearing someone talk, you're nodding your head, but you're off thinking about, a date tonight or going out with friends. And this is a really common experience for people. And these little things might not matter a whole lot during the day. But I wonder, how many of you have been so worried about something, whether you're anxious and worried about a test or worried about a relationship, that you've had a hard time paying attention to what's going on for you in the moment? I know I've experienced that. Oftentimes, people who are anxious are worried about the future, so much so that they don't really pay attention to what's going on to them immediately. People who are depressed, not always, but are often worried about the past events. And so what happens, very interestingly, is that people who are anxious or depressed aren't really here in the present moment. They're almost these emotional or mental time travelers who are somewhere else. And you see this. You'll see a group of people all, eating lunch together, but they're on their phones or they're kind of ruminating or kind of off in their own minds. And it's just so interesting that we can be around other people, but yet not kind of be there in the moment with them. And so what mindfulness proposes is how to, I don't want to say correct that, because that's a natural experience. And I'm not saying you always have to be, in the moment here and now, but how to kind of bring yourself in the here and now. If you find yourself worrying or anxious too often or depressed and you lose track of what's going on in the moment, how can you kind of bring that back so you are here? So I want everyone to do this with me. It's a little silly, but I want you to take your left or right hand. Don't write on it, but I want you to look at your hand and I want you to picture a word. And I want that word to be whatever is stressful to you. It can be test, it can be school, it can be relationship, and just envision that word on your hand. Now I want you to take your hand and put it this close to your face and just stare at that word that's right there. What else can you see? Can you see anything? No. And that's what, when we worry, that's what it's like. Whatever we're worrying about is blocking our vision of what's going on around us. And the purpose of mindfulness is not to take whatever, relationship, test, family, whatever it is and make it go away. That's impossible. But what it allows you to do is pull it out a little bit. And so it's still there, right? But guess what? You can see more of the world around it. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So... And, yep. Keep. And, I want you to do something else to kind of illustrate this. I don't want you to think about a polar bear for the next 10 seconds. Go. So I don't know if it's been 10 seconds. How'd that go? What's the first thing you did when I said don't think about a polar bear? Thought about a polar bear, right? And that's what happens when we are anxious or depressed, is that we tell ourselves, oh, we shouldn't worry, or we shouldn't be sad, or we don't have a reason to be sad. And when we tell ourselves those things, we just reinforce that anxiety or depression, right? It becomes like a tar pit. You become wrapped up in it. And so with mindfulness, the goal is that we become more accepting of those feelings. We let those feelings and thoughts be there. Yeah, and so I'll let you talk about this a little.
Oh, all right. So mindfulness is based on the Eastern meditation tradition, but it's not dependent on an ideology. Although you could be, when you think of an ideology that might be related to like meditation or mindfulness, what do you guys think of? Oh, sorry. So like if you think of like any kind of religious practice that might involve mindfulness and meditation, what comes to mind? Like what are some of the things in terms of religion that come up? Okay, prayer. Anyone else? So sometimes people associate mindfulness with like Buddhism or Eastern traditions like Chinese. But really, this is, when we're talking about mindfulness, we take the religious piece out of it, and it's more about the practice of how do you really take, like Jay said, whatever's pressing on your mind or really taking up your attention, and how do you remove it from that space. So it's really more about being aware of on a moment-by-moment basis. And that's one of the hardest things to do. Like if you're very anxious, one of the hardest things to do, has anyone noticed that when you're anxious, maybe your heart rate increases, you might get sweaty palms, you might feel lightheaded, see a few nods? What else is associated with anxiety, like when you're anxious or feeling uncomfortable? Okay, difficulty concentrating, focusing. Anything else? Feeling overwhelmed. Has anyone noticed that sometimes it seems to like sneak up on you? Like you may be worried about a test or something down the road, and you might not realize that you're slowly getting anxious, and you may only realize that once you're like fully anxious, like you're having a hard time concentrating or it's starting to interfere with your life. The idea is that many times when we're anxious about something, it probably builds over time, but one of the things is that we're often so focused on a goal or a task that we kind of neglect our, like, how are we physically feeling, those physical sensations, until they become so severe or significant that they then come to the forefront. So often you'll hear people say like, I've had like a panic attack, or I'm freaking out, or I'm having a meltdown. And it seems to them, if you ask them, and genuinely, it seems like it just came out of nowhere. But it slowly builds over time. So a lot of those things that you have, sometimes people are like, I've been having for the last few weeks difficulty sleeping. That's a big one. People have a lot of insomnia. And it's those things that kind of build over time. So one of the things about mindfulness is about being in the moment and kind of taking a self-assessment of, how do I feel today? So we can catch those earlier signs of anxiety. So it's contrast with state of mind. We talked about that. So I'll give you a quick mindfulness exercise. If y'all can close your eyes, or you can leave them open, and just for a moment, take stock of like where you're sitting. What does the chair feel like? What are your arms? Do they feel heavy? Do they feel tense? Do you feel tension anywhere in your body? Shoulders, arms, head, neck? How's your breathing? Is it fast, slow, your heart rate? What are you guys noticing? Anyone get shy? I've seen a lot of you doing this activity.
A lot of tension in my jaw
Mm-hmm. Was that something you were aware of coming in?
yeah, I've been aware of it, but
Is it because it's an ongoing?
The day of my work.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Oh, I saw a hand up. Sure. Heavy shoulders. I wonder how natural did it feel for you? Do you often go throughout the day and sit in the class and just close your eyes and focus on your breathing or how you're feeling? And you close your eyes and fall asleep, that's a little different, but how often do you guys practice these kind of activities? Some of you may. Not saying that not everyone does. So if you were going to assess how you were doing that today, right? What do you normally do? Like if you're assessing whether you're anxious or like feeling tense or depressed or sad, what do you normally tend to do? Like how do you figure out how you're feeling? Okay. So it might be very practical. We might think of objectives, right? Like, what do I have to do today? We might think of what's going on today in our life. We might think of, like, if we're thinking about depression or anxiety, we might focus on how are we doing academically, socially, or is there anything that sticks out to us, a negative memory, a positive memory? So we often are very cognitive in our assessments of how we're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's much easier. If someone asks you, how's your day? I know the correct answer is to say okay and keep on walking. But if someone genuinely, you trust that person, you want to open up, we often go through this cognitive piece of assessing our day. And mindfulness to some degree is, part of it is more physical. It's really being in the moment and taking stock of how do I feel at that point. Not on a cognitive basis, but on a physical basis. Is my heart rate, is it fast? Do I have a pit in my stomach feeling? Anyone's been sometimes so busy that they work throughout the day and then realize they forgot lunch or haven't eaten for a while? Yeah? It's one of those things where we focus can really impact us biologically. Like some of us may not even be hungry until we are starting to feel faint. Because there's a point where the biology kicks in and we're starting to feel faint. We're like, oh, I don't think I ate today. But in the moment, you're so stressed out that you're really not focused on those kind of things. Some of the things that mindfulness and mindfulness meditation is not, it's not positive thinking. When we say positive thinking, we think of like Dr. Phil, Oprah, everything's gonna be great, you can do it, you're wonderful, there's so many special things about you. That's all true. Don't think it wrong. But this is different. Not a relaxation technique. In many ways, being mindful isn't necessary. It could be relaxation, but think about it. If you're taking stock of how you're physically doing, you may realize that all of a sudden, like, I thought I was doing fine. Everything's going well. My relationship's going well. Academically, I'm going well. I do Oscar's mindfulness exercise. I'm sitting there. I'm like, why is my heart racing and why do my shoulders feel so like tense? It's not relaxation, but it helps us sometimes gain at a biological level where we're going. Going into a trance, as Jay mentioned, a lot of times if you drive, it's kind of scary to think about it because all y'all were nodding. You're driving down the road in a 6-ton vehicle going like 60 to 70 miles an hour and you're kind of on autopilot. Believe it or not, I mean, that's a little bit of a terrifying idea, but believe it or not, one of the things is they realize that people go into a trance, and one of the things they actually do in terms of manufacturing cars is the red lights for the brakes are actually designed to kind of get you out of that trance. It provides a stimulus that most of us associate with like waking up. But again, if we're in that trance state, we're actually more likely to have accidents because basically we're making assumptions about what's going to happen in the future. So if you're driving down an empty road, you fall in a trance, you probably make it there fine. It's only when the person in front of you suddenly brakes and there's an unexpected deer jumps in the way, probably not going to be as well. And it's not trying to blank your mind. I don't know, how would you blank your mind? Like how do you go into that empty mind? What do you guys think? Don't think about anything is a thought. So you'll often see people meditating, they'll focus on their breathing. You'll also see maybe a mantra. Sometimes people focus on a single constant note, so they'll be like, and they're so focused on that one cue that it does help blank your mind to a degree. But again, this is not that. This is more about being in the moment. Essentially, it's experiential. So there's formal practice, meditation, a body scan is kind of what we did where you're really taking assessment of how you're doing. Mindfulness movement, Jay, you want to explain that one?
Yeah, and again, often when mindfulness is about just being aware of things that we normally aren't aware about. So even moving your arm or moving a leg, just feeling all the muscles and, you move your arm, you do that 1,000 times a day. And you don't pay attention to that most of the time. But just little things of practicing how to be mindful is, move your arm out like this. And just as you do it, pay attention to the movement, to the muscles. And so a minute ago, Oscar did this brief mindfulness activity, and we're going to do a couple more today, and they're going to build off one another. And so I'm going to do another one. But for this one, I have to teach everyone how to do something very quickly. And this is something that especially if you're in band and have a wind instrument, you've done. But diaphragmatic breathing, is anyone familiar with that? So put one hand on your chest, one hand down here by your diaphragm. Now, if you breathe real rapidly, a lot of times you'll feel movement up here, and that's not ideally how to breathe. But if you take a slow, deep breath, it should come down here from your stomach slowly. And we often teach people, breathe 1, 2, 3, hold, out 1, 2, 3. But just very slowly, and I tend not to count because people breathe a little differently from one another, but whatever is comfortable for you. So I just for a moment want us to practice that. All right, so I'm going to do this with everyone. And for a moment, and this is easier if you close your eyes, but if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, that's fine. But I want you to close your eyes, and just for the next couple of minutes, I want you just to focus on your breathing. You breathe in, feeling the air fill your lungs, and what that feels like. And then what it feels like to exhale. Now, your mind is very good at chattering away and distracting you. So inevitably, while you're focusing on your breathing and my voice, a thought is going to come into your mind, or a feeling. Maybe you're tired, or hungry, or thirsty, or anxious. Maybe you're worried about a test. And don't fight that thought. Don't try to push it away. Just acknowledge that thought and then go back to your breathing. Again, all sorts of things are going to go through your mind, and that's okay. Acknowledge whatever thought or feeling you are having, and then go back to focusing on your breathing. Okay, what was that like for everyone? Were people able to focus on their breathing, or did they get distracted? I get distracted a lot. My mind is really busy. And so automatically I'm thinking, my wife works tonight and I've got to watch, it's my turn to watch the kids, or I have, stuff for work tomorrow, or, my mind chatters and chatters and chatters away, and that's okay. If you found yourself distracted a lot, that is completely natural and normal. I've been, I like mindfulness. It's something I've been practicing for years, and it's still something that, when I purposely do an activity like that, I still find myself distracted, and that's okay. Your mind is like a radio playing in the background when you do that. But were people able to focus on their breathing at least for a few moments at a time? Yeah, and this is one of the things, the more you do, like many things, the better you'll get at it. The more often you take even a few minutes a day just to focus on your breathing and what that feels like, the better you'll get at mindfulness in general, and just being able to again, this isn't relaxation. very anxious thoughts. A lot of things can kind of come up when you're doing this. But people generally find once they practice it regularly that they tend to be less anxious and tense.
And it's also true, like most things, if we think of like self-care, those things that we do to take care of ourselves, to make ourselves happy, they're usually the things that we drop off as soon as stress happens and real life comes to play. You know, going to the gym, healthy eating, as soon as you're under pressure, those are the things that drop off. Mindfulness is a lot, in many ways, like that. So one of the things I often suggest to my patients is to consider doing it like 5 minutes at the end of the day as kind of like a transition point. So if you think like in the evening, usually people will try to turn down their lights, or they may have a ritual in terms of right before they go to bed, really incorporating it and making it a natural thing. So then that when they're in those very stressful periods, it's a lot more easy and automatic for it to happen. But in many ways, this is a formal practice. There are some benefits even now that are coming out in terms of psychology with even informal practices of mindfulness. So did anyone know that if you're watching television, you're more likely to binge eat? And this is related to mindfulness. Why would you watching television lead to you eating more than normal? Like if you were not watching television. What do you guys think? Distracted. In many ways, when you're watching television, your focus is on something else, and the process of eating, it becomes more automatic. It's just putting food in. Has anyone ever been really hungry, gone to a restaurant, and ordered more food that they actually could eat? When we're hungry, it's probably the worst time to go shopping. It's definitely the worst time to go eating. We tend to really overestimate our hunger, and part of that is because we have this whole sensation going on. So one of the benefits of mindfulness is simply think about, we're today so busy that often our lunchtime we're just scarfing down food and we don't even taste it. The fast food industry really relies on that because some of the stuff that you eat is terrible. Looks great on the menu, but most people are scarfing it down so fast they're not really enjoying it. So next time you're going out to eat or you're having a meal snack, consider just slowing down and actually for a moment focusing on what does it taste like? What does it feel like? You know, we often will also notice that people will tend to chew their food more thoroughly if they're being mindful. Usually when they're not and it's kind of a rush to get it through, people will, actually a lot of people with dietary issues or digestive problems just because they're not chewing their food sufficiently. So I'm not saying sit there and chew 100 times or be mindful of every morsel, but just consider taking that break out of your day to make a meal more than just a necessity, but an opportunity to kind of check in with yourself. There's also things like brushing your teeth. Let's see. So it's being versus doing. Jay, you want to talk about this one? This gets too philosophical for my bet, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it does. And so it's this idea is that mindfulness is not some goal that we're going out to achieve. You know, because when you go out to set and achieve a goal, you start measuring yourself. Am I doing it right? How am I doing it compared to others? You know, if I was being graded and no one's going to grade you on this, would I get an A? And that's not the goal of this. The goal of this is not some mountain you're trying to climb. It is more just about kind of accepting in the moment, you know, whatever you are feeling or thinking. You know, this isn't something you are trying to achieve. And so, you know, that the second part, the avoidance approach, you know, at the beginning, how I had you put your hand right in front of your face? And besides for us all looking ridiculous doing this, including myself, right, that's what we do with emotions. Like, you know, when we're anxiety, it's right up in here. Or we do the opposite and we try to run away from it. We drink, or we distract ourselves, or we binge watch Netflix. And mindfulness is not about either of those things. It's about it being okay in the moment. We're not trying to hold it right up here when we're really anxious, and we're not trying to run away from it. We're just being okay with it as it is. And thoughts as real, or thoughts versus real. And this could apply to feelings too. Have you ever been anxious and said to yourself, I am anxious, or I am sad? Have you ever said that to yourself? That's incorrect. You are not sad. I imagine all you have a name. Correct? You are not sad. You are not hungry. You are not depressed. You are whatever your name is, and I am having a feeling, or I am having a thought. right? And that's all about when I say I'm sad, that brings up that feeling right here. But if you go, I'm having a feeling of sadness, it pulls it out a little bit for you, right? You no longer are your feeling, whether it's sadness or hunger, but it's this thing you are experiencing, which is a little different than who you are.
Living in the past and the future, in many ways, this actually could promote positive mental health. So one of the things, especially with anxiety and depression, for example, that's very common among college students, is that it's often based when someone comes in and they're like, yeah, I've been dealing with depression. How long? 6 months. And you ask them, have you been depressed every single moment of that time? They're like, yes. And it often feels that way. But in many cases, even if you think back to a time when you were really stressed out, were there moments of levity or times where you were just kind of like, even though a lot of stuff isn't going well, there's still happy points? They might have been small compared to the overall picture, but they were still there. In many ways, when you think of mindfulness, of being in the moment, of being able to say, if we think of past and future, horrible things have happened to me in the last 24 hours, so I'm in a terrible state of mind. Things are not going to get better in the next 24 hours, so I'm going to remain in that state of mind. But what about right now? It could be that right now I'm hanging out with my friends watching Netflix and I actually feel pretty good. I have this test and I have all these other issues going on, but in the moment at this point, it's okay. And that sometimes helps us create more of an accurate assessment of how we're doing daily and really pick up on those positive experiences that we may be having. Because the thing with the mindset of, like, if you were talking about like a hand in front of your face, is that you're kind of biasing yourself to focus more on the negative, which promotes something like depression, or promotes more anxious feelings, thinking that it's this overall encompassing thing. Then the indirect and direct experiences,
Well, I guess that just gets at acceptance is something that you are doing. I mean, it is what you are in the moment, and kind of goes hand in hand with automatic versus intentional, how you're mentally on autopilot. What mindfulness wants you to do is be intentional, that you are paying attention to what you are doing in the moment, whether that's breathing, eating, brushing your teeth, any of these little things. Instead of going on autopilot and just going through the motions like you do, dozens and dozens of times a day, is to pay attention, to be intentional about what you're doing.
so we're going to practice a mindfulness exercise, and I don't have a mindfulness voice in. So one of the things that we did was we pulled up this video. So again, if you all feel comfortable, if you guys can turn off your cell phones or anything like that, not just mute them, because the vibration actually kind of makes it difficult for people to focus on. And then just take a moment and follow through the script here.
I'm Dr. Robert Eric Dinnenberg, and I'll guide you through from start to finish. Mindfulness is present moment attention without judgment. For this meditation, we'll attend to our feet with mindfulness, and then we'll move on to the breath in the abdomen, and then to finish, we'll return to the feet. So let's get started. With mindfulness, start to observe your feet. Answer this question to yourself. What does it feel like to have my feet on the ground in this present moment? Explore this present moment experience of your feet. You might notice what it feels like to have your feet in your shoes, in your socks. You might observe different points of pressure presenting to different parts of your feet. And you might notice temperature. Simply observe whatever you notice. There's no right or wrong, no good or bad. Whatever you notice is okay. And anything that takes you away from this noticing is a distraction. Any thought about the future or the past, any worry or expectation, any internal dialogue or judgment. Notice and let go. With forgiveness, with patience, notice and let go. Notice and let go. And shepherd your attention back to your feet. And when you're ready, let go of your feet and shift your attention to your abdomen. Here we find the home base for mindfulness of breathing. Observe what it feels like to breathe in this present moment. Explore and discover your own way of noticing your own breath. You might observe a rising of your abdomen as you breathe in, and a falling as you breathe out. Your own way of noticing your own breath might include registering an expanding feeling as you breathe in, and a deflating feeling as you breathe out. Ride the waves of your breath with your attention. Anything that takes you away from your breath is a distraction. Any thought about the future or the past, any worry or internal dialogue, any expectation or judgment, notice and let go. Notice and let go. With forgiveness, notice and let go. And time again, shepherd your attention back to your breath. Back to answering this very simple question. What does it feel like to breathe in this present moment? And when you're ready to transition out of the meditation, return to your feet. This time there can be some movement in your toes, and notice what it feels like to be moving your toes in this present moment. And let this movement transition you out of the meditation, so as your fingers are moving and, if you wish, your body's stretching, you can transition fully out of the meditation. Thank you.
So, what did y'all think? I'm not affiliated with them, so if y'all don't like it, that's cool. But I was curious, what was it helpful? Did it feel weird? Any reactions? Mm-hmm. You can see where that whole mindfulness feels like relaxation comes into play with activities like this. Very true. Sure. And it's interesting because you've been breathing the same air, and it's just until you became mindful. Yeah. I don't know, did anyone... What y'all think? Would you do this long term? Are there any downsides? Any negative pieces to it? I mean, we talked a little bit about the positives, but any things you see as shortcomings in doing something like this? Some folks have mentioned that it's kind of new agey and it's not really their cup of tea.
Or if you don't see results very fast, like you have to practice a lot to whatever to get addicted to it or like to feel its change in your life.
Well, I don't know. I mean, apparently you can notice a change in the air temperature. But yeah, I mean, for some,
Oh, sorry. I covered over my mic. I forgot I had that. Glad I didn't go to the bathroom with it.
yeah, I mean, that is true. And the other thing is that mindfulness isn't in and of itself necessarily, I guess, beneficial. If we think of like relaxation techniques that are really focused on a goal, mindfulness could just actually make us more aware of how anxious we are. So you may sometimes denial is bliss, or ignorance is bliss. You may not realize how much tension you're carrying until you start doing some of these things. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there, and so if you're interested, there's a lot of different ways to do this. There's shorter videos, much longer videos, but really consider, that like anything else, different strokes for different folks. That some people may really find a specific mindfulness activity really helpful, while some others may be like, no, not my thing.
So, yeah, and before we wrap this up and take any questions before anyone goes, I just want to point out, and there are 4 handouts for you. These include, a mindfulness activity. These include resources where you can go online, and kind of a summary of the things we've talked about. If you didn't pick one up previously, I would encourage you on your way out to take one of each. And so these provide you more, links to more videos and websites with more examples. Though if you like this, it's you go to YouTube and, do a quick search of mindfulness. You'll find these videos running anywhere from 5 to 20, 30 minutes or longer. And again, this is something, I would echo that. People generally find mindfulness helpful for being more at ease with whatever they're feeling or their anxiety. I would say that if you are one that avoids how you are feeling or what you're dealing with, mindfulness tells you is a little strong, but some people who practice this, who generally avoid their feelings, sometimes unpleasant thoughts and feelings will come up. And that's generally pretty frequent if people, instead of the approach version, right, where things are right up here, if they tend to avoid, mindfulness is not about avoidance or approach. It's letting it be there. So, someone who avoids their emotions or feelings, this can allow a lot of things that you normally would suppress to come up, for better or for worse. But people do, even people who have that tendency to suppress feelings or ignore them, generally report that they feel a lot better or a lot more at ease or a lot more okay with what they're feeling after practicing this. And it depends, some people are going to take longer or more. This will be easier for some people other than compared to others. So if there's any questions or thoughts or anything. Also a list of the upcoming chats if people are interested.